Dry dust, whirled away by a bone-dry wind. Trees, creations of clouds, rain, and cool, moist air. But today they're parching beneath a blazing summer sun. On a day like this, every bit of wood, bark, and needles in the forest is fuel, inflammable as a vast heap of dry paper. This is the Douglas fir region, where parching winds blow periodically through country normally rich in moisture. Its climate is unique in all the world. The Douglas fir region occupies the long, narrow strip between the Pacific Ocean and the crest of the Cascade Mountain ranges. To the west, air lying above the restless surface of the sea absorbs moisture until it can hold no more. Flowing out of the southwest, this air becomes cooler as it moves, and its moisture begins to fall as rain. As the air crosses the mountains, it rises, losing still more moisture. And rain falling between the mountains and the sea so stimulates the tree-growing power of forest soils that the region produces 1/4 of the entire nation's forest products. 250,000 people earn their livelihood growing, protecting, and harvesting the forest crops, moving them to mills for processing, and converting them to useful products. The people so engaged draw over $700 million a year in paychecks, which in turn support a large part of the retail trade, farming, and industries of the region. A few miles away, east of the high Cascades, a completely different climate prevails. Here, logging is carried on under conditions set by the nature of inland forests and weather. In the basins, irrigated lands form green islands amidst great stretches of semi-arid and desert country. Here, dry winds rob the soil of moisture, and hardy sagebrush struggles for the water it needs to live. Normally, this dry desert air is separated from the moist country to the west by the mountain barrier, but at times this barrier fails. During most of the spring, summer, and autumn, the weather is like this. Offshore, high pressure. In the interior, low pressure. The pattern of winds flowing away from the high toward the low brings northwest winds and cool, fair weather to the country west of the Cascades. Several times each season, the pattern changes. A part of the high breaks off, drifting inland to the north and east. Now the winds carry dry air from the interior of Canada into the basins behind the mountains. A cross-section diagram shows how this very dry, heavy air fills the interior basin. Like water filling a saucer, the level of dry air rises in the basin east of the Cascades, higher and higher, until it begins to spill over the mountains and through the passes. Now an east wind, desert dry, sweeps down the slopes and valleys, spreading across the Douglas fir region, depriving the cool forests of protective moisture, converting them to great expanses of violently combustible wood, helpless against fire. Nobody can predict when this will happen, only that it does happen several times a year. People responsible for protecting our forests know about the weather, and they do something about it. While the late winter storms are blowing, logging operators are preparing plans for fighting fire should one start in the season ahead. While the woods are still soaked with moisture, loggers are getting equipment ready for fire weather, tuning up motors on portable pumps, stowing tools and hose on fire trucks, clearing and marking water holes along the roads, spotting hand toolboxes at the landings. Now let's look back a couple of years to a logging manager considering the danger of fire getting loose in this patch of snags. He knows that these dead trees are terrific spreaders of fire. Since then, the snags have been felled. Now when fire weather comes, there will be no snags to threaten surrounding land with showers of wind-blown embers. Fire weather stations provide one of the most effective ways of doing something about the weather. Invisible changes in the atmosphere that can only be measured with instruments cause sudden, radical changes in fire danger. This instrument, a psychrometer, measures relative humidity. It consists of two thermometers. One is the ordinary type that measures the temperature of the air. A clean, specially made wick saturated with water surrounds the bulb of the other. The faster water evaporates from the wick, the lower this thermometer reads. Let's take a reading. Temperature, 67. Wet bulb, 61. We find our readings on the table, and relative humidity is 71. The greater the difference, the lower the humidity. The reading tells how fast the air is pulling moisture, not only from a cotton wick, but also from forest litter, moss, and needles. Over here is a scale used to weigh a special set of 1/2-inch pine sticks. It reads percentage of fuel moisture directly, giving a good indication of how fiercely forest fuel will burn at any given moment. The observer never touches the sticks, for oil or perspiration from his hands will upset the delicate reading. Woodsmen, estimating fire danger ahead for the next few hours, rely heavily on instruments that measure direction and velocity of the wind. Tree farmers do all this preparatory work in the early spring because they want to prevent fire, and they must be ready to fight any fire that starts. Who could be happier than a fisherman in the springtime? To him, the forest means shady streams, lurking trout, a place to relax in the great outdoors. But does he realize the land he is planning to enter is someone else's property? Does he realize his access to forest lakes and streams depends on weather, fuel hazards, and above all, on his own care in preventing fire? He does, and here's how he behaves on a fishing trip on tree farm land. He listens to the gateman's directions about travel and fire precautions. During bad fire weather, the gate will be closed, but now he can go ahead. Walking only, the sign says. And he cooperates to protect this dirt fire access road from thoughtless damage. Now his thoughts turn to the water of the stream. Yet as an experienced woodsman, he notices much of interest along the banks. He makes a mental note that in places, highly inflammable slopes of dry ferns, slash, or young trees come right down to the creek. He knows a canyon bottom is a dangerous place for a fire to start, for fire runs swiftly uphill. Close by the stream, he finds moss, cool and moist, ideal material to line a fish basket. But this same moss will burn like dry paper on days when the air is dry. He's conscious of decayed wood, bark, leaves, and needles, duff that can carry fire underground and keep it smoldering for weeks. He knows that in the wettest woods, dry spots exist which can take fire from a discarded cigarette. So when the urge to smoke hits him, he picks a sandbank or gravel bar, sits down, has his smoke, and puts the stub out in the water. The great thing about fishing is the way it takes a man's mind off everything but the one great problem of teasing a fish into taking the hook. If there's anything that annoys a real fisherman, it's outside interruptions. Yet if he sees or smells smoke, any sportsman will try to find its source. And here it is, a hollow log smoldering inside, the kind of fire that takes time and tools to put completely out. But in this country, dry air is always just a couple of hours away. What if a sudden wind should come before this smoldering fire dies out? There is only one thing to do: report the fire. He sets off cursing the greenhorn who lit a coffee fire in defiance of the law and common sense, jeopardizing the privilege of all fishermen to enter this land. He stops the first tree farm truck or car he sees. Thanks to this fisherman's alertness, men and tools are summoned by radio, and the fire will be put out before it has a chance to spread. As longer, warmer days set in, the woods enter a seasonal period of drying out. From now until the late autumn rains, fires will gradually become easier to start and harder to put out. And sudden east winds become a constant threat. Forest protection organizations hire their crews available for duty at any hour. Lookouts are posted, and the whole country comes under the scrutiny of watchful eyes. Now all roads leading into hazardous areas are closed to public entry. Campers and picnickers are directed to safe, established roadside facilities. Tree farm people in radio-equipped trucks travel strategic fire roads, constantly alert for smoke. They search the timbered canyons, operating areas, distant hillsides, and nearby gulches. Day after day, the woods get drier, and day after day, the tree farmers are on watch for the telltale wisp of smoke. As the woods dry out, reserve water tanks wheel into position close to logging operations. At logging settings, full-time watchmen patrol the lines and ceaselessly watch for smoke. Now the clock becomes a weather instrument. Humidity is becoming too low each afternoon for safe logging. Work will start earlier to take advantage of higher humidity in early morning. The operations go on hoot owl shift. Men get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to arrive at their work just after dawn. Now, even in the shade of green timber, hanging moss is turning to dry and crumbly tinder. Dust flies up when trees go down. Needles in logging slash turn red and release a faint, threatening odor of inflammable resins. Fuel moisture hovers around critical levels. A man must kick deep to find moisture in the organic duff. At logging settings, watchmen keep check on the humidity as it falls toward the critical point. 35% with the wind, that's all. Everyone who hears this signal knows that fire weather is now too dangerous for any operations. Fire would start too easily, and if an east wind should come, a fire would run wild. Cost what it may in idle men and delayed production, all thoughts are now concentrated on preventing the fatal spark. Fire danger boards along public highways are set to indicate extreme. Tree farm gates stand closed and locked. State and national forest roads and trails are closed to travel. Tree farm and logging supervisors cancel all personal plans and reinforce the traveling patrols. The search for smoke goes on with redoubled intensity. Quick detection is the watchword. In weather like this, every second counts. All looks well, but somewhere fire may be smoldering undetected, and the ultimate test is yet to come. East wind. Inland air, desert dry, sweeping faster and faster across the narrow region between the mountains and the sea. And as it moves, the fire danger, already extreme, becomes even higher. Now the slightest spark can spell disaster. Listen to the wind, and listen to the men who know its meaning.
Here's a forest fire warning message from State Forestry Headquarters. Extremely dangerous forest fire weather will prevail Saturday and Sunday. Weekend tourists are requested to avoid forest areas.
13. 10 p.m. weather at Huckleberry Mountain. Humidity, 19%. Wind, east, 26 miles per hour. Have an alpha firefighter on a night like this. KOA 413.
In every tree farm, state forest, national forest, the question is, will we get it? In 1951 at Forks, Washington, they got it. Whipped by an east wind, fire ran 18 miles in 6 hours. Amid scenes of flaming nightmare, 25% of the town went up in smoke. For these devastated homes, the east wind came too early and stopped too late. In 1936, at Bandon, Oregon, they got it. An east wind found smoldering slash and clearing fires. A pall of smoke spread out toward the west. A moving wall of flame raced across the hills, destroying everything in its path. Wiping out 13 human lives and the entire town of Bandon before it reached the sea. In 1952, near Marble Mount, Washington, during critical fire weather, a sheet of flame raced 1,500 feet up a mountainside in less than 5 minutes, trapping and killing 2 experienced woodsmen. That's what they mean when they ask, will we get it? Will some tiny slip of carelessness or ignorance start another, now when suppression is almost impossible? An east wind can die as suddenly as it begins, allowing moist air from the ocean to bring temporary relief from explosive conditions. But real relief is measured with a rain gauge, and it usually comes sometime in September. Now the situation in the woods is this. The kindling is wet, but the wood is dry. A new spell of clear weather can quickly dry out the lighter fuels, making fire danger critical once more. In October, deer and elk hunting seasons are coming on, and the hunter's thoughts turn to visions of country cleared by logging, openings in the forests where game animals find abundance of their favorite browse. Such lands provide 5 out of every 6 deer in the Douglas fir region. The vast majority of it is privately owned, and fire hazard on all of it is far above average. Tree farmers enjoy hunting too, and they get along just fine with sportsmen who remember they're hunting game animals only. Not water tanks, hose boxes, donkey engines, or bulldozers. And tree farmers understand hunters who sit down to have their smokes and carefully put out their cigarettes, who can hunt all day without building a fire, who realize that land covered with highly inflammable dead ferns holds countless little trees, helpless against fire, but the beginnings of this land's future crop of timber. The hunter's best insurance of his hunting privilege is his own determination to damage no property and cause no fire, and his respect for the value of growing trees. As autumn wears on, the first heavy rains sweep in from the open ocean. Loggers watch the rain gauges, keep check on the signs that show when the woods have recovered their natural resistance to fire. They weigh the hazard of carrying this year's accumulation of slash through the dry days of next summer. If a tract is earmarked for controlled burning, weather factors come in for sharp consideration. The tract has already been surrounded with fire trails. When the timber is wet, but the slash is dry enough to burn, and wind is moderate, the slash is set on fire according to a carefully worked out plan. Foresters, backed by long experience, know it's safer to burn such slash at a time of their own choosing rather than let the east wind choose the time. Now the early winter rains set in. The woods are drenched with moisture. Shutters go up on lookout stations. Pumper trucks leave the landings and head for maintenance shops. Forestry crews collect hand tools, portable pumps, and hose boxes for return to winter storage. Now natural moisture protects forest land, and fire season comes to its official close. But fire patrols, equipment, and precautions will return to the woods next spring, next week, or perhaps tomorrow. No one knows exactly when, for no one knows when the next east wind will blow.